The crisis in masculinity, or men's mental health. What is it that we really need to focus on in order to improve ourselves without falling victim to the endless opinions that we are currently being bombarded with? So what is this crisis all about in the first place? To be honest with you, I grew up in the 90s. In the 90s we didn't really have a whole lot of options. It was either playing with Legos or making a little bit of drawings when I was a kid, or go and play outside. Neither did I really had a massive amount of friends. The only thing that I did was looking at who were my neighbors and who were the other kids in school. And these were the people that I had access to. These were the people that I would hang out with. And these were the guys that basically I would go and play outside and have fun until it was lunch and my parents had to look for me, or it was dinner and they screamed at me, dinner is ready, and make sure that at 5:30 you're on the dining table and don't leave your dining table until the food has been finished. And if you can't finish it, you go and take your plate with food and sit on your room and don't come down until you have finished your plate. Only thing that I can tell is that of course I threw all the horrible food they had to cook for me. But anyway, that part aside, we live now a little bit in a different time, a little bit of a different age. And this is of course the digital information age, where we get bombarded with information and opinions, because attention goes, money flows. And although I could say like, okay, so I create these type of videos and I share my opinion, and my opinion might not be the whole truth and the truth alone, just take away from it whatever you want to take from it. Because I do recognize there is a major issue. There is a problem we as modern men are facing and are dealing with, mainly because we live in the age of social media, which is a very big issue. Another issue is of course, when I look back to the 90s and today, when you want to call a friend and you want to tell them like, hey, you want to hang out? The majority of them tell them, nah, sorry, I'm busy, I'm doing this or that, I got my job, I got this, I got all these things going on, but maybe we can go and meet in 2 months, maybe? Let me check my schedule. So a lot of guys, they are probably saying, you know what, I can't be bothered. Then, of course, we also have things around dating and courting women. I'm no dating professional, any means. But also, like a lot of modern women, they also have access to social media and endless and countless opinions about how the world should be. And the message that we receive is the expectations a lot of modern women have. And for the majority of, let's say, 90% of men, they say, screw it, I don't want to meet unrealistic expectations. That ain't healthy for my mental health. And pull away from socializing or trying to find a way to reach out. And then of course the only options you got left is of course dating apps and all of that, and then basically we as men become more like options for a lot of women, and when dating becomes more like going on a job interview instead of trying to find any kind of meaningful connections. So what we have started to notice is that in human relationships everything has become very transactional. But the good news is of course there are always still lots of traditional women who also grow up in the 90s and recognize that it's not very healthy to have these kind of unrealistic expectations. And it's also not only about the superficial masculinity of what we are currently being represented or presented with on the internet nowadays. So these are a few problems. Now, of course, there are more problems in the world. We have countless issues, of course, that we get exposed to within the social system, the political and economic systems. I don't want to dedicate this video to this type of topics, but I've made other videos about it, because there are lots of changes coming up that could indeed influence a part of our natural biology. It could also influence our primal states of energy, of masculinity. But what is the real problem that we start to struggle with our mental health? It's part of how we grew up, I think. And within the communities of masculinity, we see that it is very normal for men to bottle up their emotions and simply neglect it or reject it. Because that's kind of like the program we have been running around with for most of our life. If I look back to my own life, I grew up in the 90s, which was the decade of the most divorces. And of course, that was also my situation of growing up. And I saw, and I called my both parents, and I decided I want to stick with my father. But in order for me to live with my dad had to go to a couple of cases in courthouse, hire lawyers and all of that. And I also got invited to come into courthouse at the age of 11 and a half in order to give my opinion with who I wanted to live my life with. But also back then, of course, the system was already more favored towards a mother or a woman instead of a dad or father or a man. So even back then there was already no really true equality between men and women, and we say we need equality, but towards which favor? And even back then there are kind of like double standards. So in order for me to live with my dad, we had to go to a couple of courthouses, plus I had to be in a child protection scheme. So when every time a social worker came to our house to see how well my dad was raising me. But of course with kind of like a preconceived opinion from these social workers on how a father actually should be. Because they thought my father was highly narcissistic and whatnot, toxic. And of course they were afraid that I would follow that as well. So even within this whole social unrest in my household, of course I felt the injustice, I felt the sadness and all the emotions that came along with it. And I wasn't really good with expressing these emotions, and I felt highly neglected in growing up in such matter. So of course I bottled things up. I became more angry, I became more aggressive and violent. And in order for me to express that, what I was doing is I would go into my school, high school, and I will find the biggest guy in the room, I will find an older guy in the room, and I will go and wrestle. And I will go into fist fights, and I will go and slam guys onto the floor, making sure they are not going home with a bleeding head. So that wasn't, of course, very healthy. So in order for me to reverse that, because eventually I got into fights with multiple guys at once, and in order for me to rebalance that, I had to go into boxing clubs and kickboxing and all of that in order for me to deal with my aggression. Otherwise things would end up not so well. Another distraction that I had during that time was of course like either drinking, alcohol, smoking, cigarettes, which was still affordable back then. Working, I became from a young age pretty workaholic. And of course fighting, sports, kickboxing and all of that in order to get rid of that, which was kind of helpful for me to deal with my emotions. And I was so much into sports that I either had two options. I never liked school, I never liked high school. So I either would go into the military, like the Dutch Marine Corps, or I would go into college. I went into college mainly because of my influence of my dad, because he said like if you go into military, things are going to be more badly for you than it already is. So you better go to college and study something. I don't care what you're going to study, just go and study something. So I studied shipping and logistic management, and that was kind of like some kind of motivation to become better. To become better so I could get a better position in the world, find a better job, and you know, all these things that we were told in our society that is gonna lead to something. But now the whole world has changed in the political system, the social system, the economic system, that even following that path is an illusion as well. So of course no wonder a lot of guys are pulling out. You know, we are in dead-end jobs, meaningless work that just give us enough to pay the bills, to pay the rents, and we see all the information out there coming at us, overstimulation. Then of course we want to withdraw and distract ourselves in things that are simply not healthy for our mental, physical, emotional well-being or spiritual health. Already know what it is. There are countless distractions and addictions we can fall into, the vices. So how can we turn that switch and focus on the things that is going to empty our glass of our programming and fill it up with the goodness? So I think for us, before you can go and give yourself to someone, let it be a woman for example, I think it's first important to fill our own glass, because otherwise you will only find yourself in a codependent relationship where there will be things around abuse, neglect or unhealthy relationship dynamics. So before you go and fall victim into these kind of patterns, I think it's very important to first take the focus on yourself to become a better person, to become a better human being. Now of course we see on the internet on how modern masculinity should look like, become a bodybuilder, jacked and athletic, and although there are certain level of truth in that, because I think we as men feel the happiest when we do some kind of physical strength exercise, lifting weights, do physical labor. Because within our past, 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the work that we used to do was physical labor. And now physical labor, of course, has become obsolete by the evolvement of technology. And now it's more about working in an office kind of environment. And sitting in front of a computer indoors in front of artificial lighting without exposure to the outdoor elements and any kind of physical resistance, that of course is kind of like lowering our hormones of testosterone as well, because through physical activity we build of course more testosterone. But now, because everything is more like mental work, we see also that now more and more women more intellectual developed can do these roles maybe much better than what we can, because maybe we feel happier when we do like physical work and work when we are outside, outdoors. We see that now lots of women maybe have lots of more better jobs and careers in corporate environments when we don't really feel that happy or satisfied or fulfilled. And then we see like women are making more money than we do as men. And now we have, what we see is that women say, well, you know, what it is that I need a man for if I'm having all this independence. Is it healthy? Not so really, because also women are kind of neglecting a feminine part within themselves, saying such things. But for us that is a signal, okay, so within traditional masculinity, the man was the provider, he was the protector, he would offer financial security and stability for the whole family. But this whole concept that we were able to support the whole family for maybe one paycheck, one salary, is of course completely out of the table, because 10, 20 years ago, governments were telling, you know, women should go to work as well. And the whole uprise of emancipation arose. And then we had these women climbing corporate ladders and doing all these things, which is great and should be supported. The only problem is that women now neglecting their own kind of like feminine nature and is giving men the signal that men have no longer a traditional role to fulfill or have no longer meaning or purpose of fulfilling these traditional values. And then of course emancipation evolved further into feminism and even other political agendas that, you know, I don't really want to go further deeper into. So this of course created a whole gap between man, woman, masculine, feminine, and makes us feel more lost, more isolated, more lonely, with a bigger void that we can't seem to fulfill. We have a void of emotional neglect we have experienced within our childhood. and the emotional abuse or other physical abuse, we have locked it up deep inside of us. We try to suppress it and neglect it as far as possible, because we also have noticed that even who are women who, or even if we're trying to open up to someone, in particularly let's say a woman within our relationship, we feel that if we do this in an immature woman with a lack of emotional maturity or emotional intelligence, we notice that if we do that, then it's either we are being seen as weak or it is being used against us. If we feel that we express an emotion and is being used against us, we will never open up again to anyone anymore, and we neglect everything that exists within us much further, much deeper, and we go through life saying that everything is okay and whatever, and we try to plaster up things with superficial things of what modern masculinity should look like. But deep down, we are of course completely spiritual bankrupt. So, where do we begin? If I can take a personal example, I tried to do of the things that I thought that I must do. Working really hard, make more money, build a business, working out, fitness and all of these things. Gaining after financial freedom and independence, so I could plaster up the voids that exist within me, which is actually like a form of narcissism that we see nowadays. This is kind of like the norm of our society and culture. But then the normal man like you and me, who want to walk away from this narcissistic society because we don't want to go along with this ass-kissing and backstabbing kind of society, then it feels like we are falling behind. We are like the unseen, the invisible man, the tiny little drop of water that feels being vaporized. Our energy doesn't really get seen or recognized because, you know, we don't go along with the superficial world. So, solutions. What could be the solutions? If I can look back, when I realized that making money, just making money for the sake of making money so I could look better in the world, wasn't really the complete full answer, because what it only gave me was more stress, more anxiety. It made me feel more depressed, and it also made me feel burned out, struggling with more chronic fatigue because I was simply exhausting myself. But then I went further and deeper into spiritual developments and self-improvements and all of that. And I went into group therapies. And I was there and I was like, what am I doing here? And this is another reason why a lot of men don't really go into therapy or group therapies or spiritual healing or all of that. Because the majority of spiritual healing groups, workshops, retreats are overall a little bit more tailored towards the feminine energy, because it's going within, getting in touch with your feelings. And for us as men, that is going a little bit against our primal nature. And it's also, most of the times, it's being given by a female therapist or healer, of course, who also have like a feminine perspective on how healing should look like. But in my case, I was there sitting in a room, going to the healer or therapist. She was asking me, so tell me what you feel, what is going on? And I was like, I'm not feeling anything at all. You go and tell me. You are the therapist here. Tell me. And she was like, okay, so can you feel the fear of feeling your own emotions? That was the first part that completely hit me. It hit me, and at a moment I tried to get in touch with something that I was hiding between all these kind of walls. I had a massive revelation, a massive awakening, a massive shift in consciousness and self-awareness. And for me, that was the beginning, like, okay, so this is opening up to a whole new path that I must commit to, I must dedicate myself to. And that is, of course, breaking the generational traumas that has been passed on to us from our upbringings, from our family lines, and perhaps even further and beyond that. So, if we could say, okay, so our purpose if we feel we have no purpose, is to first make it our purpose to dedicate to our primary purpose in life, which is the part of self-mastery. So if we talk about the 5 things that we must dedicate to, it's first of all, it's taking full ownership, responsibility and accountability to our own health and wellness. Okay, health, wellness, fitness, physical strength. Because we can go much further and deeper into all the agendas, political, economic, the things that are currently being played out in the world. We could see is that the whole food industry is basically being designed to make you highly addicted, but it doesn't feed you in terms of nutrition, which is of course also makes you feel more weaker. Having poor nutrition that doesn't feed you with the right kind of nutrition for the body, the mind, the spirit, of course it's going to make you feel more depleted and drained and fatigued, and all of these things that we currently see in our modern health. Of course, that's also going to cause more stress and anxiety and ADD, ADHD and all of that, because we don't feed our minds and brain. So that's the first part, that's the first aspect, that is the first thing that we actually need to start to focus on, because the body is the temple, of course, for the mind and the spirit. So we can't optimize the mind and the spirit if we don't optimize the body first. But right now we go through life like the body is just merely a vehicle for the head that can get us from our house to our office and back again. Now, we need to focus more on building our physical strength first. You don't have to become a bodybuilder, you don't have to become a super athlete, but at least working out 2-3 times a week. Calisthenics, body weights, resistance, gym, CrossFit. I go to CrossFit and every week I have to break through the resistance of going there, but once I'm there, I lift weights, and every week I feel I am improving my exercises, I am improving my techniques and skills, and I can improve the amount of weights that I'm able to lift. I feel a sense of satisfaction and respect for myself. So that's the first thing. Second thing, already mentioned it, from our health and wellness, and dedicating yourself is already one of the most best personal development and self-improvement factors we can dedicate our time to, because from health and wellness we're already connecting to self-improvements, taking care for our mental health. Now this starts of course with our health and wellness, our nutrition, extra supplementation, food. Invest in proper food, paleo, keto diets, high protein based diets, meat, fish, all of that. Then we will see is that we can optimize our mental health. We can go and further optimize our mental health and self-improvements by actually study self-improvements. Learn about coaches and healers and therapists and inspirational speakers. And of course you can also go and do that if you go and look to different kind of personal development communities like Mind Valley. They have an enormous amount of library of different kind of quest and self-improvement courses from every topic that you can possibly think about, that you could dedicate your time to, which of course is going to feed your mind with inspiration. This is one part. This is the second part. The third part is of course like, okay, yeah, well, I've been already through so much of self-improvement, I get it, but I want to go further, I want to go deeper. Another part is of course dedicate your time towards a spiritual practice. Or maybe you see you're optimizing your body, your health, your mindset and all of that. Maybe you see is that you're raising your vibration, your consciousness. You also start to notice is that you become more sensitive. You develop your intuition, your instincts. You become more empathetic. You are able to provide better understanding and compassion towards others. And because of that, you can also see, okay, so we are increasing our instinct and sensitivity. Perhaps now I could dedicate my time further and deeper towards a spiritual practice, or maybe a religious practice. There are over 4,000 different religions around the world. A lot of have different names around their spiritual concepts, but at the end, a lot of them actually mean the same thing. So what kind of spiritual practice or religion you should go into, you know, like make finding God your purpose, or finding the God or divine that also exists within you your purpose. I think, you know, commit to the path that resonates most with you, but also that does feel as the most native to you. So for example, I am North European, I'm here from the Netherlands, and if we talk about healing and clearing ancestral wounds, ancestral trauma or generational trauma, we could learn about the ways of our ancestors and everything they have done and what kind of spiritual practices they had. And if that resonates with you and you want to connect more with the old ways from your ancestors, then perhaps, you know, look into the North European spiritual traditions around animism or shamanism or paganism that existed here in the Germanic regions of the Netherlands, Germany, the Scandinavian, UK, British Isles, Scotland. This could be one part, but maybe you say, well, you know, that does not resonate with me for reason XYZ. Fair enough. We don't need to fight towards each other. We don't need to compete and conquer and dominate towards each other. Saying like, I have found the answers, I have found the truth, my truth is better than your truth. We don't need to do that. We can leave each other into a fairness level of respect. But this could be part of your journey as well. Like filling up your glass with something that could inspire you. So these are the first three. Mastering the internal game. Once you have dedicated yourself to your primary purpose, which is the purpose of self-mastery, which is all great, you know, to gain more knowledge and wisdom and have better conversations and be more philosophical or poetic. But what do you want to do with it? So at the end, it's more like, okay, so now you have all this knowledge and information, you're constantly improving yourself, you feel like you're filling up your glass. Now, what kind of leadership role do you want to fulfill? Once again, it doesn't always have to be in a business setting or business world. Maybe you also want to explore your creative endeavors, and maybe you do want to share these nuggets of knowledge and wisdom towards others. You see that people are deprived of spiritual knowledge and wisdom, and maybe you want to become a spiritual healer or a spiritual teacher of any kind of sort, or a coach. Or being masculine doesn't always mean we need to fulfill a masculine job, for example. When I was living in England, I have done courses and training programs and workshops around spiritual healing and Reiki master and shamanism, soul retrieval, ancestral healing. And we could say, well, you know, these are like more like very feminine roles or jobs or careers. And I had this as well within my mind, like, is this really something that I should be doing? Or should I really try to fulfill a more masculine job or role? Like going into marketing or sales, or going back to my old industry of shipping, a lot of that. The question is really for you, and that is of course the level of self-respect we must develop. Does that really bring fulfillment? Does that give you a level of meaning and purpose? And if not, then you can think, well, these roles can be masculine, but if it does not bring fulfillment, what's the bloody point? So recognize, like, what kind of contributions do you want to make in the world? And that is stepping into your leadership role. And even if you know, like, I've got absolutely no clue what exactly my path should be, but from an intuitive level, from an instinct level, I feel like this is what I need for myself to master myself in one way or another. This is what I must do for myself, and through this process, this is what I want to share with others. I teach and preach because I study and I practice. I study and I practice, therefore I teach and I preach. So this creates an harmonious flow where you can't burn yourself out of energy because you are becoming an energy generator if you follow that path. And even when there is like a level of uncertainty of how this path exactly should look like for you, you're tapping into some kind of darkness, or you feel like you can't see the whole path ahead of you, but you have some sort of vision and you feel in the heart like this is something that I must follow, then go and follow that path. If you think in a logical way, which is masculine for some reason, that we must think in a logic way. If you think about logic things because other people have succeeded doing such thing, but you try to do what others are doing, but you can't succeed for that because you don't really feel any kind of calling doing the thing that other people have done, but you feel called doing something that gets you into a creative flow. So I think like it's not only going after these superficial masculine stereotypes of all the options that we should see, like becoming a bodybuilder or becoming this really stoic kind of person, this business person, makes 6, 7, 8 figures per month and all of that, becoming like a womanizer and all of these kind of superficial things. I think the most masculine thing to do is to follow that what your heart is telling you what to follow. You can take advice from anyone, but eventually you have to create your own advice towards yourself. And you only know instinctively what it is for you. Because that's really what leadership is. What I think is to follow that instinct, that vision, and that calling and that purpose that is calling you. And then, of course, yes, this path can indeed feel lonely, isolated or whatnot, but I think if you really dedicate yourself connecting with your source of inspiration, because to be inspired means to be in spirit, and once you are in spirit, you become non-dependent on any kind of outside force or validation or whatever. You are just attuned with your source. But of course it is important, of course, that we have, let's say, a tribe of like minds where we can build a level of trust, where we can share with the things that are really going on inside of us. Instead of going to a therapist who have all the academic answers, but in regards to academics, don't forget those who got the black hats of being an academic. It also represents of being able to think inside a box. So when we are constantly developing ourselves and moving above this survival state and developing higher levels of empathy, compassion and understanding towards each other, we as men, we also should be able to provide a level of containment towards each other, a level of trust towards each other. It is safe for us to open up towards each other, and that's really what I'm referring to, of connecting with like-minded brothers in a brotherhood or soul tribe of like-minded, creative, intuitive, sensitive, spiritual men who see themselves like, yeah, you know, we are human beings having a temporary human experience, but actually we are spiritual beings trying to fulfill our soul's calling. And which means also going through the shadow and the doubt and the insecurities, the loneliness, the voids we are trying to fulfill, the generational trauma that has been passed on and all of that, and we're here to break that. Then I could only welcome you within this soul tribe. So, of course, there are more aspects to it, like, you know, like the 4 archetypes of masculinity and what it is that we must develop. There are, of course, the aspects of building the body of an athlete, the mind of a stoic, the spirit of the warrior and the heart of the poet. And there are more concepts around this whole topic. And therefore, I could only invite you not only to subscribe, leave your thoughts and comments down below, but also simply subscribe so you can get access to these communities that I'm here building together with you. Because I think this is now more important than ever, is that we stand together within this world of so-called psychological spiritual warfare, where we can be the spiritual warrior we are meant to be, to evolve ourselves, so we can build this masculine containment towards the divine feminine, who is also here to arise. Instead of competing with each other, we are here to supplement each other and work together. And that is something that we must grow together in. Women who are immature, they're waiting for men who have arrived at a finish line, but the women who take the responsibility and the accountability towards themselves, that they also have primal energies existing within them, that it is also for them come to the realization that a man can only arise further in his king energy and grow into the head of the family when he recognizes the woman is the heart of the family, and that we can only do this if we can offer a level of containment for the feminine. So I think this could give us new levels of inspiration, hope, admiration, vision, purpose, if we start to recognize and reconnect with our primal energies that exist within us. And that is also looking back towards our ancestral part that also existed within us, so we can evolve beyond the levels of survival, but that could also help us to reconnect with a spiritual essence that has been built and created, honored and worshipped by our ancestors, and that's also still here for us to reconnect with and to revive, because also that can give us new levels of inspiration and hope and energy to break through all these limitations and challenges we are dealing with right now. So, different videos of potentially what you might be seeing normally, because I like to focus more on the whole spiritual healing and shamanistic point of view towards modern day challenges that we are facing, so we can use that, heal our past, optimize the present, so we can conquer the future as spiritual warriors. So please let me know what are your thoughts. Simply drop a comment below, subscribe, share this video, and of course join our community, and hopefully I can meet you very soon.